Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1286A, and today's date is May 22nd, 2017, and the title of the episode is, How Do You Prepare the Country for an Economic Collapse Like This? Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, out in the UK, we can see that, well, things are not going very well for the Brexit, and the negotiations actually are going to start on June 19th. But we can see already the EU, well, they're telling the UK, listen, if you really want to leave, we're going to need some money, some currency. And it's going to be between 40 to 60 billion euros, or it could even be as high as 100 billion. So you're going to have to pay up if you want to leave. Now, we can see already this is going to be a problem. We can see the negotiations are going to be chaotic. And we can see that the central bankers, they're going to do whatever they possibly can to keep every single country who wants to leave the EU in the EU. They don't want any countries leaving whatsoever. Now, out in Australia, we see the Standard & Poor's, they've cut the ratings of 23 Australian financial institutions, including AMP, Bendigo, the Bank of Queensland, citing the risk of a sharp fall in property prices. Mortgage lenders in Australia faced a surge in bad debts in the event of a sharp correction in property prices given household debt is already high. This is coming from S&P. Now, what they're saying is that in the event of a sudden property market correction, all financial institutions operating in Australia are likely to incur significantly greater credit losses than present. They're saying that the property market right now, well, it's showing signs of cooling down. Within Sydney and Melbourne, home prices both are starting to slip, and it doesn't look good. And this is according to CoreLogic. And they realize that these financial institutions, well, they're going to slip as well. So they're already getting prepared for this. And we can see that we know that the housing bubble, not just here in the United States, in Canada, Australia, and many other places, well, things are starting to move the other way, in the other direction. And this is not a good sign. Now, we've been tracking the housing market here in the United States, in Canada, and we can see that things have been changing, where there are many markets now where it's becoming very, very difficult to move the properties. In Miami, we're seeing this. There's a lot of condos on the market. A lot of speculators are out there. They've purchased the condos and now they're on the market and they can't move them. So we can see there's a huge problem. Out in Greece, well, the situation there is just getting worse and worse day by day. Now, the Greek parliament once again approved more austerity to unlock the Greek bailout funds in Brussels, but it doesn't look like it's going too well. Actually, the IMF and the ECB, they're still fighting about this, and they want Greece to do more. So the Greek Finance Ministry inspectors are about to start seeking out the owners of all local undeclared properties. What does this mean? Well, they're going to be looking everywhere to get their hands on revenue. So the Parliament is going to pass regulations permitting the mass confiscation of safety deposit box contents and financial assets such as securities. To date, the process has been conducted in handwriting and is therefore particularly slow in locating the assets of taxpayers who have either concealed incomes or have major debts to the state. The tax authority will be able to issue online confiscation notices and immediately get their hands on the contents of a safety deposit box. And they'll be able to confiscate the cash, the stones, jewelry, and so on. And in my personal opinion, I don't think you should keep anything in the safety deposit box, no matter where you are. Here in the United States, well, DHS does have the right to go into safety deposit boxes. They did pass a law going way back, and we can see right now that they will have the ability to go through your safety deposit boxes. And if you have gold, if you have cash, or you have anything that's valuable in there, they will take it. They will go after it. Now, something very interesting happened with the student loans. There is a bill that was introduced that will allow the cancellation of over $1 trillion in student debt through bankruptcy. Now, this is very interesting because as of right now, every single student has to pay their student loan. And there are certain circumstances where you can get out of it. But you just can't declare bankruptcy. And what we're seeing right now is if this bill is allowed and it lets the students off the hook, the taxpayers, well, they're going to flip the bill. Now, the question is, why do they want to do this? Because you have to remember, they need to get the funds from someplace. And with all these students right now who've been going back to college, who can't find jobs, who have loan modifications under the current laws, they really can't do anything. They can't use taxpayer bailouts to collect on these loans. And this is why they're trying to do this. Now, we can see that this is a huge amount of money, $1 trillion. And it's not just with the student loan industry. We can see that there's going to be, well, there would need to be bailouts for almost everything today. Because when the system crashes once again, you can bet you that they're going to be going back to Congress saying, listen, we need bailouts for everything. And Congress is going to have to decide. Do we bail out all these companies again? Do we bail out all these banks again? And the bankers, they're really not counting on this. This is why they created the bail-in document, because they understand that they're going to have to get the funds from someplace, and that is going to be from the bank accounts. And that's where they are headed. Actually, do you know, for every $1 of student debt costs American taxpayers $38 to collect on that, because they hire debt collectors to go after these individuals? Now, is it the fault of the students? Well, they would like to make you think that, but again, they've been pushed into the system where the system right now does not work. So if you're telling everyone to go back to school, to take out $20, $30, $40, $50,000 worth of loans, because that's all you see all over the TV, go back to school, get a great job, and you come out of school, and I know a lot of people that have been graduating, and they can't find work. Actually, they're living with their parents. They have a couple of part-time jobs, and they can't find any type of real work. So what we're seeing right now is that all these individuals, and this is why they've been modifying all the student loans, because they had to stretch it out over time. Then they had to base it on the income of the student, because they realize that there are no jobs out there. They make you think there's plenty of jobs, but the majority of people who are coming out of college, there aren't any. Actually, there was one college where students actually sued because the majority of them couldn't even find jobs. And they were being promised that, yes, you'll get a job if you attend this, if you go back to school, you'll get work. And none of them actually did. Now, there's a New York bankruptcy judge who says that we've been seeing a surge in Chapter 11 and Chapter 15 filings, and they've exploded like crazy. And this is coming out of New York. And the judge is Shelley Chapman, saying that Chapter 11 have tripled in the first quarter of this year, while Chapter 15s for companies seeking U.S. aid for reorganization in a foreign court have increased sevenfold. Now, this is all coming from the retailers. And remember, the retailers that we're reporting on are just the chain stores, but we're not talking about the smaller stores where maybe there's one store or two stores and that's it. Because there's a lot of those, and those are going out of business too. They can't make it either. And we're seeing a surge in all this. So when we talk about 50 bankruptcies, we're only talking about the big chain retailers. We're not even talking about the small mom and pop ones. So we can see right now that the economy, and we've been watching this for quite a while, it is deteriorating, and we can see the decline is accelerating right now, and things are actually not improving, they're actually getting worse. And this is all being done right now on purpose, because the central bankers, they understand that the economy was never going to be able to work like this. Trump realizes that, well, listen, I tried to work with what we have right now. It is not going to work out. The system needs to be crashed, and the people need to take control of it. Now, the central bankers, on the other hand, they need to collapse the system, and they need to take control of this. And we're seeing a lot more signs of things where they're not going very well. Remember we talked about loan creation? Well, loan creation right now, and this is according to the latest Fed data, it has crashed more than it ever has since the Great Recession. Actually, we are below the point of where it happened during the Great Recession. So the situation is actually getting worse. And once we see this downward trend, we know we're heading into something that is not going to end well at all. And what we look at, when we look at commercial real estate loans over the past year, we see that banks are reporting weaker demand for the CRE loans in the first quarter. Now, we've seen this before, going all the way back to 1990 to 1991, 92. We saw this happening in 2000, 2001, 2002. We saw this happening in 2008, 2009, 2010. And here we are once again. And we're at the same exact spot where we have hit the top and now it's coming down and it's following the same exact pattern. So this tells us that we are heading into a collapse of the system. We're already in a recession. Every indicator that we've been looking at shows that we are in a recession. The corporate media, the Fed, they will not tell you you're in a recession until we're months into the recession. Then they go backwards in time and they say, yes, the recession started back in 2016 in the month of August. Now, they report on that in December of 2017. This is what they did in the Great Recession, because we were in a recession leading up to the 2008 crash in October. But they didn't report on it until 2009. And they go backward in time and they let you know when it all started. But we've been watching it. We've been looking at each indicator: industrial production, loan creation, the defaults, the auto loan industry, and we can see that it's all falling apart. The housing market, the manipulated GDP, the manipulated unemployment. It's telling us, it's flashing in our face. We are in a recession. We are now heading into a depression and a collapse. So how do you prepare the country for this? Can you just come out and say, hey, listen, everyone, I know Obama said that we're in a recovery. I know the Fed is out there saying that everything is fine, but I'm going to tell you this right now. The whole system's going to come down. It would freak everyone out right now. Think about when you first learned about it and how you felt. When you started learning about all of this, you're angry. You're upset. You're like, wait a minute, what's going on here? I've been lied to? Trump, his administration, the Fed, the deep state, they're never going to come out and tell you that the whole thing's collapsing. Trump has alluded that there are problems. The economy's a mess. Everything's in a bubble. Letting you know that there are problems behind the scenes. So how do you prepare a country? Well, most of the country, since we've been in this kind of fabulous recovery, most of the people, well, they're on a lot of entitlement programs. And when we have this collapse, all of this is going to go away. I mean, it's just going to cease to exist. And I'm talking about Medicare, Medicaid. I'm talking about food stamps. I mean, think about it. If the government goes down and we're in this collapse situation, the currency is devalued, they can't support any of this. Trump realizes this. He understands this. This is why he's cutting entitlements by $1.7 trillion, cutting food stamps by 25%, trying to get as many people off of this as possible, because what is going to happen is that everyone is going to be on their own. The nanny state will no longer exist. The founding fathers of this country didn't want the government to support every single person. The government was just to basically administer the country, not to create armies, not to create career politicians, not to give them pensions, health benefits, to create all these entitlement programs. The government was only to do the administration work. That's it. And the people would have to work and figure it all out. Now, people are saying, well, how can we do this? Well, you have to remember, the system was taken over. The system was created and put together where the government would have to take care of the people. The central bank did this to the entire country by loaning currency out with an interest attached, by allowing currency to be continually printed with no checks and balances, which meant that a lot of people were going to lose work, which meant the value of the dollar was going to decrease, which meant that things were going to become worse as time went on. And if you go back to 1971, even if you go back a little bit further than that, but from 1971, you can really see it. Going forward, coming out of the 90s, going to 2000, if you remember on the news, they said, oh, the middle class, that's going to disappear. Things are not going to work out. And we could see that inflation was hitting. That means the value of the dollar was continually decreasing. And this continually went on over time. Here we are in 2017. We're at the end stages of the economy. That's why you see wages decreasing. This is why you see the interest rates at 0%. Look at the beginning when we first came off the gold standard in 71. Interest rates were, 15, 16, 17, 18%? Well, that was to keep up with the creation of all the currency coming off the gold standard because it was being devalued. Wages were increasing. House values were increasing. Today, what do we see? House values increasing because of bubbles. Wages decreasing. Interest rates as low as possible. No one's making anything on savings. Everyone has to be forced into the market, the stock market, because that is the only thing that the central bankers have full control of manipulating to make you think that the economy is doing well. So the system was basically designed not to last for this period of time. And to keep everyone happy, they had to come up with entitlement programs, food stamps, because how else could people support themselves if there's not enough jobs? If the currency is continually being devalued, if housing prices continually rise, we're seeing inflation because the value of the dollar continually falls. And as it continually falls, it just gets worse and worse and worse. So how do you prepare everyone for a collapse? Well, you have to get them off the system. You have to make it less of a shock. Now, is it going to work? Most likely not, because we'll probably hit the collapse way before we start getting a lot of these people off the system, because I don't think this budget is going to pass. I don't think they'll let it pass. But we can see this is what is being pushed out there, and this is the way you would have to do it and approach it to have some type of soft landing. But I don't think we're going to have a soft landing. I think we're going to have a hard landing, and this is why you need to be ready and prepared for when this hits, because when it hits, it's going to be devastating, because the value of the dollar is going to decrease quite a bit. We're going to see empty food shelves, credit's going to freeze up, and guess what? You're going to have to fend for yourself. You're going to have to find food for yourself. The government will not help, because we will lose all trade with other countries, because the way trade works now is that we give dollars to these countries because they keep it in reserve to pay for the oil, and they send back products. Well, if the dollar is no longer the reserve currency, they're not sending anything here. This is why Trump continually says trade is so important right now, because he realizes that the dollar will not exist the way it is right now. We're going to need trade with other countries where we're going to have to produce something to trade with them. And we can see right now that this is something that is going to be needed. So don't depend on getting the cheap clothing, the cheap products from China. Don't depend on getting different food products from all different, like South America and other places. That's all going to come to an end for a little while. Just like when we came on the system back in the 70s, how hard it was to get fuel. That's why we had their green flags, the red flags. That's why we had the odd and even license plates, because the system was just coming online. It came off the gold standard where it all came and fell apart. They started printing money. They tried to get everything set up in the Middle East. Couldn't get oil into the country. There's no oil shortage. And you felt that. But we were coming on to a new petrodollar system. Here, we're coming off of this system where there's so much debt that the whole thing's just going to completely fall apart. This is why you need to get ready and prepared. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.